James West here reporting from Houston, Texas for Climate Desk. Now, one of the biggest uncertainties in climate science right now is the role of clouds. What better way to work that part out than flying right through them? That's what NASA scientists aboard this airplane think. Welcome to NASA's biggest airborne laboratory. You're coming with us today on an 8-hour NASA flight mission.
When you read these big IPCC climate assessments, what's the biggest uncertainty? There's two, right? The role of aerosols and clouds. Clouds is probably bigger than aerosols.
That is a piece of a puzzle that right now we are missing.
You can't get the models right if you don't understand the chemistry and the process.
Now we're being told we've got to get on. The doors are about to shut, so let's go aboard. Every time you turn on the weather, every time you hear a climate change prediction, that information has to come from somewhere. And it starts by getting sucked out of the air from planes like this.
So this mission is to particularly try to understand the emissions from the surface, so mostly biogenic emissions, so from trees and other plants.
Right now we're flying to our very first part of this experiment on the DC-8. Over Arkansas, there's a particularly pungent bouquet of emissions that scientists are interested in measuring.
Well, these emissions lead to both aerosols and to molecules that both destroy and create ozone. So these are very important things to understand for climate studies.
How it will manifest itself, it will be in more accurate and more reliable predictions.
So what we're doing is taking a series of flyovers, each at a different level of the atmosphere, scooping up those emissions, testing them, and hopefully scientists are going to see exactly what's in this column of air all the way up.
The data that we collect in one flight can keep busy 60 scientists and students for 3 years, 4 years. We're still studying data from data collected 20 years ago.
In fact, this particular mission today is its most heavily equipped in its nearly 30 years of service. Each one of these consoles here is a specially equipped scientific instrument designed to collect all sorts of different data in real time.
And this instrument here tracks the sun.
We're looking at mist chambers. They're used to strip soluble gases.
This black line is the CO2. It's about 390 ppm right now.
We're putting these filters in the bags that we've got the aerosols that we trapped out of a certain amount of air. And so we're sampling up here about 150 liters a minute.
That ultimately flows back into the operational models. It flows back into what goes on TV every day.
Anyway, I got to get this sample going.
You do it. It's a busy man at work. We can't let him rest. Well, get this. We've just spent 2 hours crisscrossing this one cloud formation. In, back out again, back in again.
Then they grow, and we track them as long as we can, and then we let it go.
Even one cloud can hold a host of answers to the mysteries of climate change.
The patterns of, where the clouds are, what type of clouds we see, what kind of weather systems they're associated with it, that'll all be shifting in a shifting climate, in a world with climate change.
Then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill. And then it will be some time to process it.
Okay, my fellow Americans, here we go on a Wednesday morning, middle of the week here, July 23rd. Hey, great to see you this morning, and thanks for joining us here on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV. Free Speech TV, of course, here in this country, coast to coast, everywhere you look. You got a satellite dish, DirecTV, there we are. And TawkrTV, TAWKR TV, is our worldwide video stream, which you find at youtube.com/boom, TawkrTV. President Obama on the West Coast. He went up to Seattle last evening, had a fundraiser in Seattle, met with the governor to talk about the horrible wildfire situation there in Washington State, which the president correctly observed is a result of climate change. Then he went down to San Francisco, arrived in San Francisco last night, spent the night there at the Intercontinental Hotel. This morning he has a fundraiser in San Francisco and then a fundraiser down the peninsula, 2 fundraisers in San Francisco this afternoon. He will fly down to Los Angeles, spend the night in Los Angeles. Tomorrow he has a fundraiser again and a speech at a Los Angeles Technical College, community college, before he heads back here to Washington. Meanwhile, in the Gaza, the fighting continues because one rocket from Hamas landed near the Ben Gurion airport. International airlines have canceled international flights into Tel Aviv, and Hamas reportedly has one Israeli soldier in captivity as a prisoner of war. And dueling court opinions yesterday on Obamacare, kind of confusing because one court said that you can't get subsidies under the federal exchange. The other court said, oh, yes, you can. These are just 2 of 4 challenges to Obamacare winding their way through the courts. Obviously, it looks like it's all going to end up and be settled by the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Obamacare is doing just fine, thank you. 8 million Americans have signed up for it. We'll take you wherever the news is today, and good to have you along for the ride. Don't forget, you can always give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
My beauty.
my power.
My life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name
is
Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
On your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
President Obama on the West Coast, raking in the dollars for Democratic candidates in this midterm election year. Good morning, everybody. How about it on a Wednesday, July 23rd? This Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. How about it? I hope you're having a good summer and a good week and a good Wednesday so far. We appreciate you're making us part of your day, starting off your day here with the Bill Press Show. Why? Because there's a lot going on you're going to want to know about, and you've got some opinions on the issues that we want to hear about. Let's put it all together. We'll tell you what's going on. You tell us what it means to you. And you can do so by giving us a call on your local Progressive Talk radio station. Listen in, listen up, and then give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Easier for you to do, then send your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. We got the team in place here this morning. Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy. Hello, hello.
Yo.
Hey, good morning.
How about it? Alicia Cruz, there she is on the phones, ready to go. Take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. In his spot on the video cam, Cyprian Bolding, our videographer, keeping us looking good on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV. And don't forget, we're not only there on your local Progressive Talk radio station, we are there on the TuneIn app. It's free. Download it. And you can find us on the Progressive Voices channel. And then on the video side, Free Speech TV. You got a satellite dish, DirecTV. There we are. And worldwide, if you got an electronic device, we're there on TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. President Obama, as I said, out on the West Coast. He is in San Francisco. Fast asleep, one would assume, at this time. Intercontinental Hotel in downtown San Francisco. His first stop was up in Seattle. And just before that, over in the South Court Auditorium of the old Executive Office building, he signed a new jobs bill yesterday, surrounded by Republicans and Democrats from the Congress, saying that this was a win-win for all.
This is not a win for Democrats or Republicans. It is a win for American workers. It's a win for the middle class. And it's a win for everybody who's fighting to earn their way into the middle class.
And the president noted this is so unusual. This is so rare to actually sign a piece of legislation that, maybe we ought to do this more often.
I want to thank all the Democrats and Republicans here today for getting this bill done. This is a big piece of work. You can see it's a big bill. But I'm also inviting you back. Let's do this more often. It's so much fun. Let's pass more bills to help create more good jobs, strengthen the middle class.
Pass more bills. We'll have more parties like that at the White House, right?
There you go.
Don't you think?
Yeah. Why the hell not?
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, big day today here. Congressman Keith Ellison from Minnesota is going to be along in studio with us this morning. We'll also have reporters from The Hill, from Politico, and from Media Matters, some of our favorite outlets here. All of that going on. And big news in the courtrooms yesterday on Obamacare probably confused the hell out of you. Well, we will sort it out for you in just a minute. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
What do you got, Peter?
Just a couple of other stories making news. In California, Governor Jerry Brown announced earlier this week that he has signed a bill that will limit full contact football practices in middle school and high school. Now, this doesn't address games, so when you do play games, it's still full contact, but the law says that if you're having practice with a team, you can't have full contact practices. So they're sort of trying to cut down on injuries and concussions and things like that, starting in middle school and high school.
I like the idea.
I'm conflicted about it.
But it does raise the question, if you're not practicing it, how can you then go out on the field and do it? You know what I mean?
I think there's an issue there.
Yeah.
But
right.
I think it's a good step in the right direction, but I mean, if you're gonna not let them get hit in practice, imagine the surprise when they get hit in a real game.
Yeah, right. And they may not know how to do it in a real game, and they could cause some injuries that way. So maybe I better give Jerry a call and
give your buddy a call.
Talk about
hey,
this,
buddy.
It's too late. He already signed the damn bill.
And you know Crocs, right? The footwear, the foam, cushy Crocs.
Yeah, I don't have them. But
no, neither do I, because I'm a grown-ass man. I don't wear children's shoes.
I prefer Birkenstocks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Crocs were founded 12 years ago, and it looks like they might actually be going away. They announced that they are closing 75 to 100 stores and laying off up to 5,000 employees.
Oh, wow. I think they had their moment.
They had their moment.
By the way, I've seen a lot of Croc substitutes around. You know, that knockoffs on Crocs, I guess, right?
Knockoff Crocs.
Yeah, all kinds of different ones.
Which are amazing, because they're only like, $20 to get a pair.
Yeah.
So the fact that they make them for cheaper. But, look, people, I guess, just got tired of them. They're moving on. So yeah, they're closing some stores.
You know what they say, got along without you before I met you, going to get along without you now.
And believe it or not, somebody is putting Sarah Palin's name on a ticket, except it's not a political ticket. It is the cops in Wasilla, Alaska. They pulled Sarah Palin over. She was going 63 in a 45-mile-per-hour.
Was she driving?
She was driving.
Oh, man, how the mighty have fallen. Sarah has to drive herself.
I know. Toyota Tundra was going, like I said, 63 in a 45. Cops pulled her over. TMZ caught up with the former governor and asked her what was happening.
Oh, she blamed it on Obama, probably.
She said, I wasn't speeding, I was qualifying.
What does that mean?
Well, like a race car, you have a qualifying race.
Yeah, right.
She was too busy looking at the view of Russia she had.
Apparently.
Yeah, she was hurrying to get home to the porch.
Apparently. So
she saw Russia shoot down that missile from her front porch. That's right. Shoot down that plane.
The benefit of living where she does.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's her foreign policy.
Right. Okay. Whoa, no, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. Wait a minute.
Go ahead.
I mean, this is full court press, right?
Sure,
I'm very disappointed. We count on you to update us on your stories and keep us up to date on all the news of the day.
What?
I mean, last week, I think it was just a week ago today, you told us about the new restaurant in my hometown.
Oh, Lewinsky's on Clinton Street.
Lewinsky's on Clinton.
Yes.
It's all not Clinton Street.
Well, it's on Clinton Street, but it's Lewinsky's.
The name of the restaurant is Lewinsky's on Clinton because it's Clinton Street where I grew up in Delaware City, Delaware.
Okay. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is I talked to my sister yesterday and my brother.
Okay, in Delaware City.
Yes, right. And remember I told you I knew that this restaurant was coming and it had some obnoxious name coming, but I didn't think that was going to be it. It was not. Originally, he said he was going to name this restaurant Buster Nuts because he's got a restaurant called Krabby Dick's, and this was going to be the companion, Buster Nuts. Well, so instead, he came up with Lewinsky's on Clinton. That's one update. The second update is you'll be glad to hear that the waitresses in Lewinsky's on Clinton, of course, wear blue mini skirts.
No.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Yes. No. There it is. There's the update. You heard it here first.
Oh, God.
Hot off the press.
They better hope that they don't get
And apparently it
stains on
is
there.
doing great.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe
so,
it. Buster nuts.
And the blue mini skirt.
That's, hey,
yeah.
Go with what you're good at, I guess.
I know. Yeah, so, just the latest update on
Thank you for the update.
on my hometown, Delaware City, Delaware.
Thank you for the update, sir.
Yeah. It's like Lake Wobegon. All right. We need that little sounder now.
Yeah, you can close it back out. No, this is nothing like Lake Wobegon, to be clear.
I think they have a Buster Nuts.
Buster Nuts and a Krabby Dicks on old Lake Wobegon.
On Lake Wobegon.
No.
Yeah, that town's getting so hot, I might want to move back.
Oh, man.
All right. Yes, indeed, on the serious front. Obamacare was really confusing yesterday. I mean, there were two court decisions, and they were confusing and also totally contradictory. One of them basically said, down on Obamacare, leading Ted Cruz to go out and said, it's all over. I totally gutted the bill. Let's start from scratch. Ridiculous. But the other court ruling said, yes, on Obamacare. So you had one no, one yes. What does it all mean? Well, first of all, let's put it in context. It's important to understand this, that there are, some people just will never accept Obamacare, no matter how successful it's been. So there are indeed, right now, 4 court challenges to Obamacare, making their way through the courts. 2 of them have already been decided in favor of Obamacare. So 2 wins for the White House. This is as of yesterday morning. 2 decided yes, and 2 still pending. All right. Now, yesterday, one of the cases on appeal, one of the cases, see, it's confusing to me too. Okay. 2 wins for the White House, both of which have been appealed, and then 2 still pending. Okay. On the wins, one of those appeals was decided yesterday here in Washington, D.C., where a panel voted 2-1 against Obamacare, saying that you can't get a subsidy to buy Obamacare if you get the Obamacare through the federal exchange. You can only get the subsidy through the state exchange, which really doesn't make any sense, I don't think. That was one ruling. Of the 2 cases that were pending, one of those was decided yesterday, and an appeals court unanimously, not just a panel, the whole court unanimously said just the opposite. But of course, if you qualify for a subsidy, you can get it whether you buy it on the federal exchange or on the state exchange. So and this limited appeals court panel here in Washington, D.C., that decision will certainly be, it was announced yesterday, Judge Ernest told us at the White House, will be appealed by the Justice Department. Elizabeth Wydra, you remember her, she is with the Constitutional Accountability Center, a frequent guest on our show. She pointed out yesterday that nobody can understand where these 2 judges here in D.C. were coming from.
No one, not the people who wrote the law and not the people whose job it was to put that law into action in the states, understood the statute to work in the way that 2 judges of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals said it did this morning.
Remember, and Elizabeth is just a constitutional scholar. She's not a liberal or conservative. I don't know what she is. She just looks at the law. So she just says objectively it doesn't make any sense. She continued, when you look at the law, you look at their ruling, everybody says, what?
It would make no sense for Congress to have written the law in the way that the majority of judges on the panel in the D.C. Circuit said that they did.
Yeah, makes no sense at all. So what is the impact of what happened yesterday? I mean, don't believe Ted Cruz. The real impact is, for now, nothing. Because you got one anti-Obamacare that is going to be appealed. You've got one for Obamacare that will certainly, all 4 of these cases, what it really means, are going to end up before the Supreme Court someday. And remember, the Supreme Court has already ruled in support of Obamacare. So unlikely they're going to reverse anything. Basically, And in the meantime, anybody who's getting, nothing will change. If people are getting a subsidy, you happen to be one of those who got a subsidy buying in your state, you're okay. Subsidies continue. If you're one of those people listening or watching who got a subsidy to buy Obamacare through the federal exchange, you're okay too. So no impact at all immediately until one day it gets to the Supreme Court and ultimately to be decided. But in the meantime, I think it's important to take a look back, as I did yesterday, with why haven't we heard more about Obamacare lately? Why haven't we heard anything about Obamacare lately? I mean, I haven't heard anybody say repeal, for months and months and months. Why Republicans suddenly stopped talking about it? I'll tell you why. Because of these numbers. Here's where Obamacare is today. 8 million Americans have signed up, now affording health insurance, which I could never afford before. 6.7 more million. On top of that, I've gotten Medicaid through expanded Medicaid under Obama. On top of that, over 3 million young Americans under 26 have been able to continue on their parents' health insurance plan under Obamacare. 7.9 million seniors have already saved $9.9 billion on their prescription drugs because they got rid of the donut. 76 million Americans in private health insurance are now eligible to receive expanded coverage for preventive care service. And 74% of Republicans, according to the latest Gallup poll, who signed up for Obamacare say, hey, this is great. I really like it. What took us so long? So 74% of Republicans like Obamacare. That's why you don't hear John Boehner or anybody else talking about repealing Obamacare anymore. What's your story with it? What's your case with it? What's your experience with Obamacare? We've been in it now for almost a year. 866-55-PRESS, our toll-free number. Let's talk about it Wednesday morning on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Conflicting court opinions yesterday on Obamacare has some people confused. Don't be confused. It really doesn't mean anything. Obamacare is working. It's a huge success. It'll only pick up more steam as it goes along. And these court challenges will eventually be resolved, despite a couple of dumb judges here in Washington, D.C., ruling adversely yesterday. Let's say hello quickly to Mike in Shepherdstown, West Virginia. A great little town. Been out there many times. Hello, Mike. Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. I just wanted to make the point. My wife has had kind of a bad run of luck. She has an infection. She's immobile. I have to take care of her for now. But she's been very sick. But the point to be made here is, if we did not have the Affordable Care Act, we would have to file for bankruptcy.
Really?
Yes,
yeah.
sir. Yes.
You know, I'm sure there are millions of cases like you, Mike.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make that point that, would they prefer that we all file for bankruptcy? Is that what they want?
Yeah, or have to sell your home or, whatever, I mean, to do that.
And we're both in a position where, she works as a contractor and so do I. We're both, we have our own small businesses.
Uh-huh.
It's very difficult.
Sure.
So, but thank you for pointing that out, Bill.
No, Mike, I'm really glad that you called. Sorry for your troubles there, and best to your wife and to you too. And that's the case of Obamacare. It is specially designed for people like Mike and his wife, and many of you I know listening and watching. People who do not have health care where they work and haven't been able to afford it before, and now can and are just able to have that kind of protection, which God knows we all need, and if we don't need it now, we'll need it sometime. Obamacare, it's working!
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
Eye cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Here we go, 34 minutes after the hour, starting off this morning, talking about Obamacare and a couple of court rulings yesterday, which had a lot of people confused because it looked like one court was saying, oh, no, we're going to get rid of Obamacare, and the other court saying, no, it is here to stay. Neither court decision has that kind of an impact. What you have is two people on one court here in D.C., again, saying, you can only get you can only take advantage of the available subsidies under the Act if you buy through a state exchange. Nobody can figure out how they came to that reasoning. And another court, an entire appeals court, not just two judges, the entire appellate panel saying, no, if you qualify for a subsidy, according to the law and according to what Congress intended, it doesn't matter whether you buy Obamacare through the state exchange or through the federal exchange, the subsidy is valid, which I'm sure will be the opinion that prevails in the end. Meanwhile, Obamacare, a huge success with over 8 million Americans signed up and enjoying health care for the first time in their lives. A couple of comments on that before we move on to David out in Sacramento, California. Hi, David. What's up? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. How you doing?
All right, great. Thank you. Thanks for getting up early there.
Oh, my God. 3:30 in the morning just to hear your show, man.
That's dedication, man. We appreciate it. What's up?
I love your show. Here's the thing. I'm on Covered California on the Obamacare.
Yes.
All right.
By the way, the most successful Affordable Care Act plan in the nation in
It's
California.
Amazing.
Yep.
It's amazing, Bill. I'm telling you right now, they have root canals and crowns that they never have on dental ever on Covered California. You get root canals on the first upper six on the first and the six bottoms. You get root canals and crowns that they never had ever before. Now that it's covered on the crowns.
Really?
now.
I had no idea. Yeah.
Yes, you can get crowns now on the first upper on the first stick in the middle from the left to the right and the bottom and from the bottom left and the right now. And it's getting better.
I'm ready. All right, David. Listen, I'm glad to hear that. And by the way, Diana Dooley, who's the really good friend of mine, she is Jerry Brown's Secretary of Health and Human Services in California, and she's the one who has put that program together. I'm going to call Diana right after the show and tell her might want to talk about a root canal.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Ann is in Dunkirk, New York. Hey, Ann. Good morning.
Hey, Bill. Listen, I just want to say that personally, our experience without Obamacare 5 years ago, my daughter was being treated here for a cancer, pancreatic and breast, and it was $4,000 a month. She couldn't afford that. We couldn't afford that. She was married to a German because I was 20 years in Germany with the embassy over there, and because of that entree into being able to have their system, it has cost them nothing. But it cost her nothing except she misses her mom and her family.
Sure.
But and I feel so sorry for people who have sick children and don't have the option of going to socialized medicine. I'm sorry, I'm not a communist. I'm not very pink, but I love Obamacare, and I wish that we had it here.
Absolutely.
For her,
no.
but we didn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
and you don't have to be a communist to like Obamacare. You just have to be a good American, right? And realize and believe, as I do, that health care is a right. It's not a privilege, and every American should have access to it. And we're closer to having that goal than we've ever been before with the Affordable Care Act. And good to hear from you. By the way, I had that same experience living in Europe. Broke my leg skiing. I had a motorbike accident, and in both cases, one in Switzerland, one in France. Totally taken care of. An operation in one case on my left leg when I broke skiing, and didn't cost me a dime. It's just if you live in that country.
What a foreign concept.
I know, and that's true in Canada and in England and in France and in Spain and in the Netherlands and in Denmark and in almost every civilized nation except ours, and in Germany, of course, as Ann pointed out. Why not? Hey, one other issue I just want to touch on, and it's getting to the point of just absurd, and that is on immigration and the border and all that we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks about this humanitarian crisis. This is not a political, scandal. This is a humanitarian crisis of these children as young as 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 16, 17, coming across the border. 57,000 of them so far, probably more by now. It's the last number I heard. Unaccompanied by their parents, coming here from Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, just for survival. I mean, as dangerous as that trip up here is, it's more dangerous even staying home. That's why their parents have put them through this. And so it's a situation crying out for answers. Jay Johnson, who's the head of Homeland Security, testified in front of Congress yesterday and pointed out, as I mentioned yesterday as well, the numbers are down. They're down from about 500 a day to maybe, it was 350 a day, down to about 150 a day now. But still, there's a serious problem at the border.
You're not declaring victory. This could be seasonal, but the numbers are dropping. Nevertheless, The recent rise in illegal migration requires a sustained, aggressive campaign by our government in response.
Yeah, it really requires Congress to get off its ass and do something. And President Obama has said, all right, if you're not going to pass comprehensive immigration reform, even though the Senate passed a bill a year ago, if you're not going to do that, at least give me what I need to deal with this present crisis. $3.7 billion, so we can get more judges down there, more people to deal with help these children in these detention centers while they're waiting for the deportation hearing, and the majority of them who will not be allowed to stay here, to get them back to their country of origin. And what's Congress going to do about it? Nothing. What have they done so far? Nothing, except bitch about it and talk about it. People like John McCain and Lindsey Graham, well, let's send them all back. Just put them on a plane right away. Yeah, right. Well, the law says you can't do that. The law signed by George W. Bush and passed unanimously in both houses, Republicans and Democrats, right, back in 2008. So what's happening, they haven't done anything so far. And yesterday, both Republicans and Democratic leaders announced that they're probably going to go home for 5 weeks in August through Labor Day, 5 weeks. So they have one more week. But yesterday, both Steny Hoyer in the House, John Cornyn in the Senate, Republican Democratic leader said most likely they're going to go home without having done anything.
Yay, all right.
Yeah. Here we go.
Good job, guys.
Here we go again. They're hopelessly gridlocked. Democrats are saying, yeah, let's give Obama the money to deal with this crisis because we need to, because these are kids. And Republicans are saying, we will not give him one dime unless you change the law. Well, they voted for the law, right? Maybe sometime down the road you got to make some adjustments to the law. But this is their law. This is their bill. This is their president. Bush who signed it, not Obama. They're the ones who passed it, not this current Congress. So the idea that, what does it take to get this Congress to act on anything? I mean, I remember saying they'll never go home without dealing on student loans. They would not do that. They're not that cold and cruel, right? Yet they did. Then we said, just in December, they'll never go home without dealing with raising the minimum wage. They wouldn't do that. Oh, yes, they did. They'll never go home without extending unemployment insurance for the people who've been out of work for more than 6 months. Oh, yes, they did. And now they'd never go home, leaving 57,000 children at the border without any assistance, without any help. Guess what? That's what they're going to do. The total worthless bunch of skunks.
It shows
you throw the whole bunch out.
It shows the real value of voting, why you should vote, because they've learned that they can get away with it.
Yep.
They've learned that they can get away with it, except for maybe Eric Cantor, and maybe people are starting to say, like, hey, you guys got to get something done or we're going to put somebody else in.
No, they do nothing, and we pay them $175,000 a year to do nothing.
Sweet
and
gig.
again, don't listen to me, listen to Norm Ornstein and others who are very independent, objective watchers, if you will, observers of the Congress. Democrats are willing to deal. It's Republicans who just dig on their heels on every single issue. Every single issue. Senate Democrats today are putting up a bill that will give the president not $3.7 billion, but they've toned it down to $2.7 billion. And Republicans still say, no, we will not give him a dime. Republicans are blocking this just like they blocked everything else. We'll take a break, come back and talk to Mike Lillis from The Hill on the breaking news of the day.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on TawkrTV. This is the Bill Press Show.
12 minutes before the top of the hour, we've been talking Obamacare and talking immigration, writing on both stories for The Hill. Great newspaper covering goings-on here in Washington, D.C., both on The Hill and at the White House. Mike Lillis, staff correspondent on our newsline this morning. Hey, Mike, good to talk to you again.
How you doing, Bill? Good morning.
We're great. So I know you were one of the first ones to write about this conflicting court decisions yesterday on Obamacare, right? What's it really mean for the 8 million people who've signed up on Obamacare?
Well, it depends on who you are. Obviously, this doesn't have any practical effect right now. These are decisions that will be appealed in both cases, and it looks like this is another issue that will head to the Supreme Court. So we're talking about, months and months and months away. But from a political standpoint, it gives both sides something to crow about. The D.C. court ruled that the subsidies on the federal exchanges are not legal because the language in the law explicitly said that the state had to create the exchange. So Republicans jumped all over that and saw an awful lot of statements, including one from John Boehner saying this is just another reason that this thing is unworkable and we're going to keep pushing to repeal it. That's, of course, red meat for their base.
Yeah, they've had a lot of success repealing it for the last 4 years, right?
They have.
Yeah,
they have. Well, if you ask them, it's just the Senate that's preventing that from happening. They passed dozens of their bills, but another issue altogether. But they didn't have much time, of course, to gloat because a couple hours later, the federal court in Richmond ruled the opposite way, and then you saw a lot of statements from Democrats. So, this is a partisan issue. It always has been, and the court rulings yesterday, again, give both sides something to throw to their base ahead of the elections, and that's where it stands right now.
I am not an attorney, but that has never stopped me from playing an attorney, pretending to be. But if you just try to sit back and look at it, if people who can't afford health insurance, right, can get a subsidy to help them buy it, why would it make any difference whether it's they get their insurance through the federal exchange or a state exchange? I mean, I heard several attorneys yesterday scratching their heads, saying they didn't understand that D.C. decision.
Right. Well, no, it's just the judges in D.C. taking the language very, very literally, because the language says, quote unquote, it has to be established by the state. The exchange has to be established by the state, and they took Congress at their word. You know, when Obama and the Democrats passed the law in 2010, they thought every state would create its own exchange.
Right.
So they didn't think that language was going to be a problem. 3 dozen states did not do that. They left the task to the federal government. Most of those states are run by conservative who just didn't want to participate. They wanted to, put a finger in the eye of the administration for pushing this thing on them, and so it's just an issue of those judges taking the language literally, and the other side of that is, what was congressional intent? And the 3 judges in Richmond said, well, obviously Congress intended the subsidies to go to everybody.
To go to everybody who would qualify. Yeah. The other issue, quickly, Mike, is I saw that both John Cornyn and Steny Hoyer yesterday, we just talked about this, said, you know what, we're just not going to do anything about immigration, not even about the supplemental, not even about the kids at the border before we leave for August. Basically throwing in the towel. Is that where we are?
I don't think they're throwing in the towel necessarily. It's just like it's a kind of a growing sense of pessimism that they can reach a compromise. Both sides say that they want to get things done, but there's this disagreement over this 2008 law that would make it easier to deport these people. There's a disagreement over costs. There's going to be a disagreement over offsets. I think you're going to see a disagreement over whether or not to send National Guard troops down there. The sides are just so far apart that they're saying, we want to get something done, but we don't think that there's time to do it. Only 7 legislative days left now before they leave for their recess. So I don't know that throwing in the towel is the right word, but there's definitely a sense now that nothing will happen before they leave.
Unbelievable. I mean, I think we all felt that this crisis with these kids, 57,000 kids there, at least on this issue, they could come together and do something, right? We've known about it now for 2 weeks at least? I mean, probably longer, but I mean, it's been in the news for the last 2 weeks. We've been dealing with it. And they have 1 week left, and they just don't think they can get anything done.
Sure, but this is an immigration issue, and they've been talking about immigration for years and haven't been able to get things done. So for them not to be able to do something in a couple weeks is actually not much of a surprise, even though it's an emergency situation.
No, given this gang, it's not a surprise. That's for sure. Okay. Hey, Mike, good to talk to you guys. Thanks for getting up early for us. Appreciate it. Talk to you again soon.
Sure, thank you, Bill.
Mike Lillis with The Hill, thehill.com.
This is the Bill Press Show.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan. Thank you. And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
In the next hour, we will talk Media Matters with Jeremy Holden from Media Matters. Paul Brandus from West Wing Reports joins us. Peter?
Bill, last night was a Republican Senate primary runoff in the state of Georgia. Incumbent Jack Kingston lost to businessman David Perdue. That means that Perdue will go on to face Michelle Nunn in the Democratic, who got the Democratic nomination. The Perdue is a former CEO of Dollar General and Reebok.
And kind of a Tea Partier.
Kind of a Tea Partier. Jack Kingston, 11-term congressman.
Yeah. But I think that Democrats in Georgia were hoping that they'd be able to run against Perdue.
Yeah.
More of an extremist than, not as bad as some, but more of an extremist certainly than Jack Kingston. And so for Michelle Nunn, that's a good news last night. For Democrats, good news. How great it would be for Democrats to pick up Georgia, especially with Michelle Nunn, daughter of the famous Sam.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Okay, my fellow Americans, here we go on a Wednesday morning, middle of the week here, July 23rd. Hey, great to see you this morning, and thanks for joining us here on Free Speech TV and on TawkrTV. Free Speech TV, of course, here in this country, coast to coast, everywhere you look. You got a satellite dish, DirecTV, there we are. And TawkrTV, TAWKR-TV, is our worldwide video stream, which you find at youtube.com/boom, TawkrTV. President Obama on the West Coast, he went up to Seattle last evening, had a fundraiser in Seattle, met with the governor to talk about the horrible wildfire situation there in Washington State, which the president correctly observed is a result of climate change. Then he went down to San Francisco, arrived in San Francisco last night, spent the night there at the Intercontinental Hotel. This morning he has a fundraiser in San Francisco, and then a fundraiser down the peninsula, 2 fundraisers in San Francisco this afternoon. He will fly down to Los Angeles, spend the night in Los Angeles. Tomorrow he has a fundraiser again and a speech at a Los Angeles Technical College, community college, before he heads back here to Washington. Meanwhile, in the Gaza, the fighting continues because one rocket from Hamas landed near the Ben Gurion airport. International airlines have canceled international flights into Tel Aviv, and Hamas reportedly has one Israeli soldier in captivity as a prisoner of war. And dueling court opinions yesterday on Obamacare, kind of confusing because one court said that you can't get subsidies under the federal exchange. The other court said, oh, yes, you can. These are just 2 of 4 challenges to Obamacare winding their way through the courts. Obviously, it looks like it's all going to end up and being settled by the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, Obamacare is doing just fine, thank you. 8 million Americans have signed up for it. We'll take you wherever the news is today, and good to have you along for the ride. Don't forget, you can always give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Good to have you with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
my beauty,
my power,
my life. But I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped,
and tied. Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama in San Francisco. Lucky man this morning. Hey, good morning, everybody. What do you say? It is Wednesday, July 23rd. So good to see you today. And welcome to the middle of the week, Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show. The president may be on the West Coast. We are here in Washington, D.C., keeping our eye on what's going on here in the nation's capital and around the country, including California, and around the globe, and we'll tell you all about it. Invite you to tell us what it means to you by giving us a call on the toll-free line, 866-55-PRESS. Here we are with you on your local progressive talk radio station nationwide. We're here with you on the TuneIn app as well. If you don't have a good progressive talk radio station or any at all where you live, you can follow us on the radio at the TuneIn app. Download it. TuneIn, it's free. And then look for the Progressive Voices channel, and we are there with you. Also coming to you live on television, Free Speech TV, nationwide and worldwide on our video stream, TawkrTV, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV. With all of that going on, there is no excuse for not tuning in, not being part of the program, and we thank you for doing so. Joining our team, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hey, good morning.
Here we are.
Happy Wednesday.
I know.
Woohoo.
Made it halfway through the week
there
so far, I know. With Alicia Cruz standing by to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS. And on the video stream and on Free Speech TV, it is Cyprian Bolding, our videographer, who keeps us looking good. Thank you, Cyprian. We welcome also back to the show today a man who's here often enough. He's almost a member of the team, Jeremy Holden.
What do I have to? That's exciting.
Yeah, you're getting up there.
Member.
Yeah, we have. It's like some of those little coffee shops where you get a punch each time.
Yeah.
That's right. I get my punch card on the way out.
If you get your 10 punches, then you get.
But we don't validate parking, damn it.
No, none of that. Right. So, yeah, it's sort of like, around things are so ugly in Washington these days that President Obama just can't get anything right. John Boehner particularly will not give him credit for anything. As Conan O'Brien points out last night, how bad the blame game has gotten.
John Boehner is in the news. John Boehner is blaming President Obama for the border crisis.
Oh, yeah.
He says he's blaming President Obama for the border crisis. Boehner's also blaming Obama for global warming, tensions in the Middle East, and the latest Transformers movie, which he says totally his fault.
Yeah, right. I'm surprised that Dick Cheney hasn't blamed Obama for shooting down the plane yet.
Yeah, right.
I kept waiting.
It's just a matter of time at this point.
I kept waiting for that, right? Yeah. Either Cheney or John McCain.
Yeah, and I thought we could keep our high quality Transformers movies.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
All right. A lot coming up here. Jeremy Holden here again with us for the first half hour. Then we'll be joined by Paul Brandus from West Wing Reports. At the top of the next hour, Congressman Keith Ellison from Minnesota, who is spending this week trying to make it through on the minimum wage. I think he's having a lot of PB&J sandwiches this week. On white bread.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wonder Bread.
All right. And we'll get into the latest on the media front with Jeremy. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. The Queen of England is a little embarrassed after one of her prized horses, a horse that won the 2013 Ascot Gold Cup, a horse by the name of Estimate, tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. The performance-enhancing drug in particular was morphine. The council that sort of oversees the horse racing randomly selected a couple of horses. Estimate was one of them, tested the horse out, and, morphine.
That whole royal family that test positive for drugs. Are you kidding? They're all on drugs.
Now, the Queen is very hands-off,
starting with
obviously.
her.
Sure. Yeah, the Queen is very hands-off of any real goings-on, but she owns the horse.
Yeah.
She answers for the horse.
She could not have put up with that dysfunctional family she's got without taking drugs. I mean,
Really didn't see that coming in horse racing either.
Yeah, who knew?
oh no!
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Who could have seen that? Philadelphia has a restaurant. Volvaire is the name of the restaurant. It costs about $500 for 2 people. It's a tasting menu, and it's very steep. So, the Philadelphia Inquirer's Craig Laban went to review the restaurant, and he found out a very disturbing new possible trend. Halfway through the meal, a server comes out with a silver platter bearing different phone chargers. And the server says, quote, "Is your battery running low? A lot of people like to Instagram while they're here, and we wouldn't want you to run out of power," encouraging people to charge their phone on a silver platter during your $500 per couple dinner.
You know why? So they can take pictures of their...
That's what he's saying. You go on Instagram, take a picture, put it on Instagram. They're encouraging you to stop and take pictures of your food, and they're telling you to charge your phone so that you have enough juice to get through the meal.
It is unbelievable.
How many punches do I need in the card before I get dinner?
It's all there.
You got a ways to go, buddy.
A lifetime of punches.
Yeah, I've been here 9 years. I haven't made it that far yet. So,
but I don't think if I'm at a really fancy restaurant like that, I don't think I want everybody with their cell phones out and everything.
That is tacky.
That's really tacky.
This qualifies for why we can't have nice things.
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. Bill, you go to the White House a lot. Have you ever smoked pot at the White House?
No, but I wanted to.
Okay, well...
But I asked Patty Reagan once if she'd ever smoked pot at the White House.
Is that right? What'd she say?
She said, of course she did.
Of course she... Well, she's not alone.
She had, yeah.
She's not alone. On his...
I also asked her if she ever had sex in the Oval Office on the rug.
What did she say to that?
She said she wanted to, but there were too many Secret Service agents
That's
around,
a good
even
point.
in the middle of the night.
That's a good. Well, I don't know if you knew this, but Snoop Dogg has an internet talk show that he hosts with Jimmy Kimmel, and he was doing the show, and Kimmel asks him, "Have you ever smoked pot at the White House?"
Snoop Dogg?
Snoop Dogg. And he said he has.
Whoa.
He said he was at the White House. The way he got away with it is he told the person he was with, "I have to go to the bathroom." They asked him, "Do you have to go number 1 or number 2?" And so that they know how long he's going to be in there. He said, "I got to go number 2. And by the way, I'm going to light a piece of toilet paper
to
cover up the
House.
smell." Because he said he wanted to light a piece of toilet paper. And they said, "Okay, fine." This is all according to Snoop Dogg, by the way, which you can take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
So he said he went to the bathroom, he lit a joint, he took a couple of puffs, he put it out, and he went back and carried on with hanging out at the White House.
That's questionable.
I find that hard to believe, but, if you're Snoop Dogg, you can probably get away with it.
I mean, when you're the most famous pothead, probably of this generation, yeah, you could probably get away with it.
Well, it gives me some ideas.
No,
there's no briefing. There's no briefing today or tomorrow. Friday?
Press, what are you doing in there?
Number 2.
It smells like the teacher's lounge in here.
All right. Thank you for that. Yes, indeed. Do you think we can recover after these stories?
Good luck. I got nothing at this point.
Good luck.
All right. Now, we've all been obsessed with the coverage of the downing of this plane in the East Ukraine. Fox News, of course, has always found other ways to cover it, right? Not the straight news reporting, but somehow blaming this on Obama or...
Yeah, well, we've seen a similar arc over at Fox News, right? The initial reaction was some variation on what would Reagan do. I mean, because obviously Reagan would have saved things, fixed things right away. And we looked into the facts. That's totally not the case, right? A very similar situation happened in 1983. Reagan initially delayed going back to Washington, D.C., didn't want to end his vacation early.
When the Russians shot down the KAL
that's right.
007 plane.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
with a member of Congress on board.
Right. And so the answer to the question, what would Reagan do, that voices on the right wanted to ask right away, is he'd schedule horseback riding and he'd tool around the ranch for a couple of days and then come back to Washington, D.C. And I think this is a very silly...
And in his memoirs, by the way, he complained about having to leave and told about how much he was looking forward to those last 3 days on the ranch and how he hated to leave and how he hated the fact that he had to come back and everything. So he was not a happy camper.
Right. And we see these attacks come out every time some type of international or domestic crisis lands, is that, anything that President Obama does comes under scrutiny and attack. Fine. So that scrutiny is warranted. But I think most people understand that in an era of cell phones and Wi-Fi and constant access to means of communication and information gathering, that the president is always working. So this is just kind of silly. I think where the conservative narrative really went off the rails was yesterday and toward the end of the weekend, when we started to hear claims that fixation on what's happening in Gaza is a distraction from the crisis on the border. It's a distraction from Benghazi. It's a distraction from the IRS. That somehow the media is in cahoots with international actors to create these incidences that will distract the public from the scandal du jour that Fox and their allies on the right want to fixate attention on.
Or that the president is capable of stirring up as if he wants to see a war in Gaza, right, in order to get people's attention away from the crisis at the border.
Yeah, it becomes almost a parlor game that when any new event happens, when any crisis occurs, you pick the conservative media pundit and the time of day where one of them is going to mention Benghazi. It's kind of like a game that we have to play at this point because we know it's going to happen. It's sad, but I think it shows how this knee-jerk attempt to politicize any scandal and use it either as a cudgel to bring down the president, as a cudgel to try and tear down any future political run for former Secretary of State Clinton, and to just kind of distract everybody's attention from what's happening. It's sad, but it's the reality of the times we live in.
Now, you've heard me say before, and all of our listeners have heard me say before, that the thing that I appreciate most about Media Matters is that you listen to Mark Levin and you listen to Rush Limbaugh and Laura Ingraham and Sean Hannity so that we don't have to, and you report on all of their lies and counter with putting out the truth as opposed to what we hear from them. But one of the new things that I've seen right-wing talk radio involved in more so than ever before lately have been primary contests on the Republican side. I mean, Laura Ingraham is the one who David Bratt, did we have to decide how we pronounce that name, right?
Yeah, right.
The guy who beat
Bratt.
Eric Cantor, really made his campaign. Down in Georgia last night, we saw Perdue, the challenger, beat out Jack Kingston for the Republican primary with strong support from right-wing talk radio. And there's a race in Tennessee, I think, where they're also involved in, right? I mean, so they're almost kingmakers now, or playing that role.
They certainly want to play that role. And Laura Ingraham has been saying for more than a year now that she was going to be engaged in any primary challenge to any Republican who she thought was too friendly to this idea of immigration reform. We saw that play out in that Virginia House race where Eric Cantor went down. Mm-hmm. And she's increasingly been very vocal about her interest in helping Lamar Alexander be defeated in his Senate primary. She was on Fox News yesterday talking about a rally that she was going to be going to every day.
Anti-Lamar, incumbent Senator Lamar Alexander, former governor.
That's right. And this idea, and so, one of the other voices that's part of this campaign to be kingmakers, to use the conservative media as a kingmaker, is Eric Erickson. And he's made very clear what the strategy is here, that the Tea Party radio infrastructure feels like they only need to win one, maybe two Senate races, and they can achieve their goal of just basically shutting down Washington, like even further. They think too much is happening in Washington, right? So we need to shut down the Export-Import Bank. We need to make sure that there's no forward movement on immigration reform, right? Immigration reform, something that is popular with overwhelming majorities of the American people who want to see a pathway to citizenship as part of any effort to fix this system. Laura Ingraham and her allies on the right feel like they can use their media platforms to just elect one, maybe two people to the Senate and stop any forward motion on these initiatives.
Well, and the other place we saw them involved, of course, was in the Mississippi primary, which one would think would be resolved, except Chris McDaniel has refused to accept the results. And and continues to challenge Thad Cochran, and that may go on who knows how long, right?
Yeah, it very well may. And again, we saw this morning, the Georgia primary ends last night. The winning candidate, what is his first move in the morning? Appear on Fox and Friends, right? Go to that curvy couch and speak to the base, kind of shore up support. So you see this cycle go through. Laura Ingraham is out there on the ground. She's using her platforms on Fox News and now on ABC, a paid contributor on ABC, Laura Ingraham.
No.
Yeah, she's a contributor on ABC News. You'll see her.
How could she be on both?
Official part of the family over there on Sunday mornings. From
No.
time. Yeah. So Laura Ingraham now gets mainstream credibility bestowed on her by ABC News. She can run around the country, campaign for Tea Party candidates, and then bring her campaign to Fox News. This is the media that we have this day and age.
I didn't know that. I can't believe that ABC News would hire a Fox contributor, a Fox personality, and present her as an independent political analyst or whatever.
And she'll temper her rhetoric when she's on ABC News because she knows that audience isn't quite as open to the things she says on her radio show, certainly the things she says on Fox and Friends. But yet what she's getting is the stamp of approval from a legitimate media outlet, which she can then use to leverage into a bigger audience for her radio show and more credibility when she appears on Fox and Friends.
I think I better call Fox ABC News right after the program and say, I think you need a counterbalance here. Yeah. Do you think they would hire an out and out lefty like me? No way. No way. But they'll hire a right winger and get away with it. Jeremy, thank God for Media Matters. Jeremy Holden's here with us, bringing the good news and the bad news to the program this morning. Join the conversation, 866-55-PRESS, some of the latest outrages you've heard from the right-wing media crowd. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all of the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university? And,
yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, already 27 minutes after the hour, Paul Brandus with West Wing Reports joins us in the next half hour. Jeremy, not much time left here, but I know following Media Matters, you just did a report on media coverage on climate change.
Yeah, one of the pressing issues of our time. We just saw the hottest June ever recorded. All right, so climate change, it's real, it's happening right now. So we wanted to look and see how's the media covering this so far this year. And, the news is better than they have in the past. We've seen more coverage in the first 6 months of this year on those Sunday shows, those big Sunday news shows, than we saw the previous 4 years combined.
Really? Yeah.
Still not enough coverage on the nightly news broadcast where so many people still go for their news, and still too much false balance. And I think that's the big story. We need less segments where Bill Nye is debating Marsha Blackburn over whether climate change is happening. Right? And we need more recognition that this is real and what are the solutions. We just saw a poll come out that said that America leads the world in climate denialism. And I don't think anybody short of Rush Limbaugh and his ditto heads are proud of that reality. Rush Limbaugh's bragging about the fact that we don't believe in science. I don't think anybody else is proud of that fact.
Yeah, let's move beyond that. And thank God the BBC maybe paved the way, right? Saying they're just not going to give any more coverage to climate deniers.
That's right. And look, I think we looked at PBS. They're doing a really great job, and I think they're showing a model that the rest of the media can follow, covering the story in an important way.
Yeah, God knows. No, yeah, put that other crap behind us. Hey, Jeremy, Research Director for Media Matters, MediaMatters.org. Thanks so much. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. We'll punch your card on the way out.
There you go, on the way out.
Is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Racing dot. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan. Thank you. And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you. Oh, man. Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, 33 minutes after the hour, it is the Bill Press Show indeed. This Wednesday morning, July 23rd, we're coming to you live from our nation's capital and brought to you today by the National Education Association, the good men and women, teachers of America. Members of the NEA under the new president, Ellison, making a difference in America's classrooms every day. You bet. We thank them for their support, and you can find out more about their good work at NEA.org. President Obama taking the presidency with him to the West Coast these couple of days, in Seattle last night, then down to San Francisco, where he spent the night. He'll get up this morning and do a couple of fundraisers in San Francisco before he goes down to Los Angeles for a speech at a community college and another fundraiser in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, we've got war in Gaza and continuing efforts on the part of, at least a talk on the part of Europe to join the United States in imposing some tough sanctions on Russia. What's up with the situation over there, particularly with our relations with Russia? Paul Brandus is the founder of West Wing Reports and joins us, good friend of the program, joins us in studio again this morning. Hey, Paul, good to see you.
How are you?
So you have some firsthand knowledge of Russia, right? You were over there as a reporter.
5 long years.
Where?
Based in Moscow.
How's your Russian?
Based in It's, well, not as good as it used to be. I have a degree in Russian, but sort of a use it or lose it kind of thing. I can still tell dirty jokes if I have to. It's pretty good.
All right, we'll take your we'll take your word for it. Yeah, right. And so, is there any doubt in your mind that Putin is calling the shots in eastern Ukraine?
Oh, absolutely not. There's no question. When people make, I think, the mistake of talking about how these separatists in eastern Ukraine, let's call it what it is. I mean, this is Putin's shadow army. I mean, they're being armed by Russia itself just across the border. And
trained.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this missile that shot down this airplane now, the U.S. intelligence community yesterday came out and said there's no direct tie between Russia per se and the shoot down. However, they gave these separatists, again, Putin's shadow army, they gave them the missile. I'm sure they showed them how to use a very complex piece of engineering, a surface-to-air missile. So when they say, well, there's no direct involvement, yes, but indirect involvement, there's a ton. So let's make no mistake about who's behind that.
Right. And if Putin wanted to, right, he could call off the dogs and just basically say, okay, this is over, right?
He could.
Yeah.
He could.
Why won't he?
Well, you have to understand the mindset of this guy. I mean, Vladimir Putin is former KGB agent. That is the environment he grew up in. This is a man who called the collapse of the Soviet Union, this is a quote, he said, one of the greatest geopolitical catastrophes of the 20th century. And he's talked about what a disaster it is that all of these former Soviet republics
all these republics are out there, yeah,
are now on their own, and they have a lot of Russian speakers who are there. They should all come back together under his domain. That is really frightening talk to people in the Baltic republics, particularly Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, now, by the way, members of NATO, and the United States is obligated by treaty to defend them. They've moved fighters and those kind of things there. Ukraine and Georgia, as we saw in 2008, do not have that kind of protection. So I think perhaps a big mistake that we never really moved on getting Ukraine and Georgia into NATO. Big mistake.
And by the way, nobody is talking about Crimea anymore, which was part of Ukraine, and Putin just seized and got away with it.
Well, Crimea is gone. There's really nothing that we can do. I mean, this is in his backyard. And short of, I don't think anybody advocates sending American military, U.S. troops into. Come on, that's certainly not going to happen.
Right. No. But Putin certainly felt emboldened by getting away with Crimea, and he must also feel emboldened by the fact that yesterday was a big day. European leaders were meeting, David Cameron and Angela Merkel, and they all been talking tough about Putin, and we're going to show him, that we're not going to tolerate this. The United States had already imposed sanctions. President Obama on the phone with all of these guys saying, okay, it's your turn. You got to do something. You got to put it. And they did absolutely nothing. I mean, are they afraid of this guy? Are they so dependent on Russian gas and oil?
Well, that's partly it. They don't want to freeze in the winter. I mean, Germany, for example, gets about a third of its energy needs from Russia, so they've got to wean themselves off of that. And for all of the talk in Netherlands, of course, really at the epicenter of this tragedy. Netherlands is a huge trading partner with Russia. There are thousands of jobs in Holland that are tied to trade with Russia. So there's only so far you can go before you cut off your nose to spite your face. So I really don't know how far the Europeans can go here. Putin understands this, and it has emboldened him. He understands that Obama can't push him all that far. I think Obama is reluctant to do so. And I think Putin, for whom international law means very little, and if we had time, we could talk about all of the transgressions going back years that he's been involved with. I mean, let's be honest about who Vladimir Putin is. I mean, he rules over basically sort of a mafia type of country where these oligarchs with tens of billions of dollars are propping him up. People give Putin credit for rebuilding Russia. No, Putin stays in power because oil is $100 a barrel, and that revenue really enables him to do whatever he wants. That's why some people say, look, the best way to deal with these dictators, be it the Saudi royal family or Iran or the mullahs in Iran or Putin itself, to do something to bring the price of oil down, become more independent, energy independent, and then kind of kick the legs out from under them. But that's a whole other.
At the same time, in our dealing with Putin, it's, the Europeans have their problem with their energy needs. We don't depend on Russia's energy, but we do have other dealings with Russia, which means we can only go so far as well, correct?
Well, if we want to put a man in space, we can't put a man in space anymore. We have to send our American
Good point.
astronauts to Kazakhstan, the former Soviet Republic, where they're launched.
If we want to get our people back from the space station, we have to depend on the Russians for a ride.
Oh, that's awkward.
Yeah, there's only room. There's only room for 3 guys in the back.
Oh, darn the luck.
So we are dependent upon them for many things, not so much energy. But, and that brings us to another point that we were sort of talking about off air here. I think, I've not heard anybody connect the dots in this fashion, but I think that Obama can only push Putin so far, given Obama's number one foreign policy priority is this nuclear deal with Iran. Well,
Right.
Russia is a member of the so-called P5+1. The Russians have a less incentive to get a deal with Iran than we do. There are billions of dollars of oil and gas deals that the Russians have in Iran. They're building, believe it or not, more nuclear reactors in Iran, which both Tehran and Moscow claim are for peaceful uses, electricity generation. That's probably true. So the commercial ties between Moscow and Tehran are wide. They are deep. So Putin is really in a position, I think, to gum up the works on these talks. Now, so far, he hasn't really done so. I mean, Iran has made, I think, pretty significant concessions over the past year.
Right.
Not enough to please the White House, though, so we've kicked the can down the road till
another 4 months.
Till
right.
Thanksgiving or so, on these talks. So Putin is really in a position to really squeeze us on what is Obama's number one priority. Now, Putin is also in a position to squeeze us on Israel as well, because if you look at sort of this hideous food chain in the Middle East, you have Hezbollah, which is in Syria, which is propped up by Iran, which is propped up by Putin himself. So this hideous food chain. So if Putin really decided to, he could squeeze us on Iran. He could squeeze us more on Israel simply by making it easier, by arming Hezbollah and Assad and all of that. So he really is holding some pretty good cards here.
And we haven't mentioned Syria, which is another place where we were able to get rid of the chemical weapons with the cooperation of Russia,
right,
and continued dealings with Assad, trying to bring about the change there in that ongoing civil war. Russia also plays a significant part. So, again, I think you make a good point that it's not as simple, I guess, as some people say. Oh, they helped shoot down this plane, therefore we just cut off all ties with Russia. We can't cut off all ties with Russia.
No, it's extraordinarily.
What about
complex.
something like? Aren't the summer games headed there in 2018?
The World Cup.
Oh, the World Cup.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the World Cup,
Yeah, the World Cup.
Just yank
Oh,
the
that'll
World
show
Cup from
them.
Russia.
That's 4 years. People won't even remember 4 years. People have such short memories. I mean, remember, we boycotted the 1980 Summer Olympics after the invasion of Afghanistan. Jimmy Carter pulled the plug on that. Well, that didn't exactly convince Brezhnev to pull out. All they did, in fact, was retaliate by boycotting the '84 Los Angeles Games.
Yeah. Just a whole complex of issues, all of them related right now, and all of them on President Obama's plate. Where it's Gaza, it's Eastern Ukraine, it's the Malaysian airline flight, it's Syria, it's Iran, and they're all interconnected. Paul Brand, nobody knows it better than Paul Brandus here from West Wing Reports. Join the conversation at 866-55-PRESS. And President Obama's latest poll numbers, what does it all mean? Paul Brandus will tell us when we come back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Congressman Keith Ellison, co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House of Representatives, one of the most liberal members of the House and a good friend of the program here at the top of the hour in studio. Right now we're visiting with Paul Brandus from West Wing Reports, talking about the situation, the complex foreign policy crises on the president's plate these days, particularly dealing with Russia. So, Paul, for no drama, Obama, he's certainly a lot of drama these days. How's it impact him in the public opinion, in the public opinion polls? What do you find?
You know, it's really interesting. If you look at, the polls are all over the map, and people talk about polls they like and say polls that they don't like are clearly biased and flawed. So the way to look at this is to take all the polls, average them together, and that's what our friends at Real Clear Politics do. Well, that number shows Obama at 42% now. He's kind of hovered between 39 and 44 since about Christmas, so the last 6-7 months or so. So this kind of narrow, 40 to 45 basically, despite all of these issues. I mean, the IRS scandal or alleged scandal, depending on all of these things. So he is kind of holding kind of steady at about 42, and people say,
is that average for a second-term president?
Well, a lot of presidents, as you know, run into trouble in their second terms. Reagan had Iran-Contra, Clinton with Monica Gate and so forth, and Nixon didn't even make it out of his second term, of course. Right. But if you look at presidents at this point with about 2.5 years to go, and this makes sense to me if you look at the numbers, Obama is at 42%. At this point in July of their second terms, Reagan was at 63%. This was before Iran-Contra.
Oh, okay.
This is before Iran-Contra.
Yeah.
Clinton was at 61% peace and prosperity in the 90s. Of course, he was highly popular. So he was not as popular as those two guys. He was less. Eisenhower was at 53%. Late 50s were a pretty good time. So he's less popular than Reagan, Clinton, and Eisenhower, and that makes sense to me, I think. On the other side of the scale, he's more popular than three other presidents who, at this point in their terms. Richard Nixon, of course, who at this point was at 24% and about a month away from resigning.
Yeah.
Harry Truman was at 35%. If you can believe it,
Yeah.
I mean, despite
Ending
the Korean War
War.
was what dragged him down. So he's kind of in the middle, I think. Oh, and also George W. Bush, lest we forget, who was at 37%, I think. So he was less popular than Reagan, Clinton, and Eisenhower, which makes sense to me. More popular than George W. Bush, Nixon, and Truman, which I think also makes sense.
So sort of like right there.
He's kind of in the middle. He's kind of in the middle.
Meanwhile, where's the Congress?
Well, the Congress
record sort of low, right?
They're sort of at this friends and family kind of level. I mean, I think the same Real Clear Politics thing. If you average together all the polls, they're about 12, 13%, which is actually up in the past.
Yeah.
They, I think, bottomed out at about 11%, and now they're all the way up to 13% popularity. But that means about 75, 80% of Americans, this is a shocker, disapprove of the job that Congress is doing. So what's funny is Republicans, they like to cackle about, Obama, 42%, ha, ha, ha. But the Republicans are in far worse shape than he is. You never hear them talking about that.
No, the Republicans are, and the Congress is,
Oh, absolutely.
Right, both. So the president is on the West Coast. He's been getting a little bit of flack because he has not adjusted his schedule, particularly his fundraising schedule, to reflect crises in the rest of the world. But he did decide maybe it's not a good idea to do Jimmy Kimmel tonight.
You think? I see tweets all the time about how he's bringing back ancient Rome, how he's playing golf while Rome is burning.
Yeah.
It just is not, from a standpoint of optics, to go on some late night TV show and yuck it up with Jimmy Kimmel while you've got, Syria and Ukraine and on and on and on. You just can't be doing that. But nevertheless, the fundraisers continue because the Senate is at risk here. So 5 fundraisers, and he's closing in on, I think, about 400 fundraisers at this point, which people say, well, he's fundraiser in chief. That's what presidents do. Bill Clinton is the only guy who went to more fundraisers. But look, Senate candidates in 2012 needed about $10 million to win. The average Senate winner and the average House winner needed about $1.5 million. He brings in the bucks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah. It was interesting yesterday at the briefing. Josh Earnest would not admit that the reason they were not doing Jimmy Kimmel was because they knew it would look bad. It was just sort of that was just one of the factors. It was the schedule. It was all of that. No, they made the right decision on that one.
He's going to be in L.A. for there's time.
Yeah, there would have been time. Hey, Paul, great to see you. Thanks so much for coming in again. All right, come back again soon, and I'll come back and tell you, speaking of the president, what he has on his schedule today in San Francisco and Los Angeles. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
All right. I know you like the first 2 hours. You're going to like hour number 3 even more. At the top of the next hour, one of our good friends, Congressman Keith Ellison from Minnesota, one of the leading liberals in the United States Congress, will be here in studio with us to talk minimum wage and a lot of other important issues. And then Kyle Cheney from Politico will be here. Kyle Cheney, no relation, thank you, to talk about the big rulings yesterday on Obamacare. Don't forget, we lose you on Free Speech TV, but we don't lose you altogether because you can join us on our video stream, TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I probably would make a time machine.
I would make medicine for the sick.
I'd probably invent something new.
我会赢到5个总冠军戒指。
If I could have an extra 5 years to live.
You said 5, right?
5 years. It's a long time.
I would try to fix everything I did bad.
I would bring my uncle back because I miss him very much. I would get more hamsters.
I would probably want to go looking for dark matter.
I think I'd go looking for aliens.
If I could live an extra 5 years. I was thinking about making like a helicopter, like a wooden helicopter, but I don't have any wood.
I want to go check out the moon sometime.
I'd probably teach my sister not to hate tuna.
I would try and invent a machine that lets you run at light speed. If I had 5 more extra years to live, I would be the boss of all the chipmunks.
Eu cantaria na frente de 1 milhão de pessoas.
I don't really know. I think I'd do anything. Why are you asking me that?
This is the Bill Press Show.
Congressman Keith Ellison joins us at the top of the next hour in studio from Minnesota. And then we'll also be joined by Kyle Cheney from Politico to talk about Obamacare. President Obama is in San Francisco. Maybe not quite waking up yet, but at the Intercontinental Hotel. He this morning will attend a fundraiser for the House Majority PAC with Leader Pelosi, you can be sure, at the Four Seasons Hotel in San Francisco. And then this afternoon at noon, he will be having lunch at the home of a good friend of ours, George Marcus, great businessman in California, an investor in the Bill Press radio show. President Obama at his home today for lunch for a fundraiser for the DCCC. Then he goes down to Los Angeles and a fundraiser this afternoon in Los Angeles. No Jimmy Kimmel show tonight. No, we're not going to do that after all. We'll be back with our good friend, Congressman Keith Ellison.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found in the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
President Obama on the West Coast this morning, waking up in San Francisco. Lucky him. We're here in our nation's capital. Actually, we're in San Francisco, too. We are everywhere, The Bill Press Show, this Wednesday morning. With all of you, good to see you this morning, and thank you for joining us. We're there with you on your local progressive talk radio station, nationwide, coast to coast. We're there with you on the TuneIn app. That's the easy way if you don't have a progressive radio station where you happen to be. Download the TuneIn app. It's free, and join us on the Progressive Voices channel. And worldwide, there with you on our video stream at TawkrTV, youtube.com/TawkrTV, TAWKRTV. Very excited this morning to welcome back into the studio a good friend of the program, a leader of the Progressive Caucus in the United States House of Representatives, our own Congressman Keith Ellison from Minnesota. Congressman, so good to see you.
Bill,
you are on the cutting edge, man. You're out there.
Dude, it's like old home week. Whenever I come here, it's like just checking in with my old pal, which I am doing, you and all your listeners. But I got a friend with me today.
You belong. You have a friend with you today. Do you want to introduce her, or shall I introduce her?
I think you do
great.
a better job than
Bringing your friends to the show is a whole new thing here.
You know what?
You started a whole new trend.
Bill, all I want to say is, anybody who doesn't know about the work of Ai-jen Poo and the National Alliance for Domestic Workers needs to. They're on the cutting edge of trying to empower workers who have been historically disempowered. That's the housekeepers and the nannies, the maids, people like that. And I'll just let you take it from there.
All right. Ai-jen Poo, who joins us, is executive director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, working with the Congressman and other members of Congress to get some economic justice for the 2.5 million domestic workers who do what kind of jobs?
Child care, elder care in the home, cleaning, cooking, all the work that makes all of the work
Nannies
possible.
Even?
Nannies, absolutely.
I mean, it's a huge, we're talking about a huge population here, right?
It's a huge and growing population, and there's segments of the population, like the elder care workforce, which are is the single fastest growing occupation in the country because of the huge need for care that American families are facing.
And these people, these workers are not like part of Medicaid or a government program at all, correct?
No, domestic workers work for private households all over the country, unmarked households. So you actually never know when you walk into a neighborhood which homes are workplaces, right? So they're not registered, they're just hired by word of mouth, sometimes off of Craigslist, the back of a newspaper, a laundromat. So it's very informal and oftentimes in the shadows.
Okay, so how did you guys get together here, Congressman?
Bill, I was minding my own business.
Yeah.
I was minding my own business, thinking about how to counteract this drastic and dramatic and ugly income disparity in our country that's growing and getting worse. And I was just reading, and I run across the name Ai-jen Poo. And she was in a magazine article, and I said, I want to get to know this person. So, I think I just called you, right?
Mm-hmm, that's right.
Yeah.
And so we started talking, and I participated in one of her demonstrations. And since I was just totally electrified by the work they were doing, really impressed by the work they did to try to win paid sick leave, I think in California. And I thought to myself, wow, anybody who's organizing, I mean, if I could be very candid.
You always are.
Right. Well, I mean, look, when you think of a disempowered worker, I think of somebody who's a maid. I think of the movie The Help. I think of relatives, female women, relatives I have who have worked in people's homes and literally had no recourse on anything.
No
and
protection
she's fighting
whatsoever.
for them.
Yeah. And these are not members of a union, correct?
So a lot of people don't know this history, but in the 1930s, when the New Deal was created and the labor laws that are the cornerstone of our basic protections for workers, like the Fair Labor Standards Act and the National Labor
All of those things.
All of those bills actually explicitly excluded domestic workers and farm workers because the deal was cut with Southern members of Congress who did not want those two groups of workers who were African American.
I was just going to say a lot of them because they were, sure, black.
To be included and protected, and particularly to have the right to organize. And the thing about that is that despite that exclusion, domestic workers have organized for hundreds of years in this country. The first domestic workers strike was in 1881 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Look at that.
And in 1974, domestic workers finally won protection under minimum wage laws, but were still excluded from many, many protections. And this generation of domestic workers that's coming together in at least 26 cities around the country are starting to change that.
Mm-hmm. And what are you seeking legislation from Congress?
Yeah, so we've been working in the states, actually. In 2010, we passed the first Domestic Worker Bill of Rights in New York State. In 2013, we passed legislation in California and in Hawaii. And just a month ago, Massachusetts became the fourth state in the country to pass a Domestic Workers Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And now we're working with Congressman Ellison and others to both increase the minimum wage, right? We're going to do that to win immigration reform and to continue to figure out how we improve the quality of these jobs, which we believe are the jobs of the future.
Right.
When we think about
she mentioned a couple of things, Congressman. First of all, the idea that they're working state by state by state, this is happening with same-sex equality. This is happening in so many areas.
Minimum wage.
Even
in the municipal level.
Wage, right? That's right. Because the Congress won't act.
So true. But I tell you one very thing.
It must be frustrating for you.
It's frustrating, but we're not frustrated, right? We're just fired up and keep on pushing. You know, we've done some great stuff on wage theft that I'd like to get into a little bit. But my point is that when we see if Ijen and her crew can prove that Americans want this around the states, then the argument against it in Congress becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. And then at the end of the day, you know, the people who oppose it, all they can really say is that, look, we want to be able to treat our mate any way we want to. Well, no, you can't. And because Ijen's not going to let it happen. We're not going to let it happen. So we're very much supportive of all these state efforts, but it is time for the federal government and the Congress to get involved in this fight. And we want to stand there with her and her people as she does it.
Right. And now she mentioned immigration reform, for example.
Big deal.
We reported this morning, so we know there's this humanitarian crisis at the border. It's not a political scandal. It's a humanitarian crisis with these children at the border.
That's right.
And everybody said, oh, well, this is one thing where Congress has to come together before they take this long August break and do something. And they certainly would never dare leave town without it. Well, it's reported in the New York Times this morning that Republicans in Congress are saying, no chance of getting anything done before we break. And so basically do nothing. Is that?
Well, you know, we're here. We have this week and next week to get something done.
Look, we're Wednesday, right? You probably go home tomorrow, Thursday, so it's next week, maybe 3 days next week.
Look, there is plenty of time to act.
There is.
You know, we're not acting for, sadly, the same reason we haven't acted on immigration reform, on unemployment insurance. People got cut off on December 28th. Minimum wage. The Highway Trust Fund is still not dealt with yet. They're messing around on the XM Bank, and that's surprising because the Import-Export Bank doesn't cost us anything. It actually returns money to the Treasury,
and businesses love it.
Right, and if the business can sell more stuff abroad, they can hire more people. So it's a jobs thing, and so there's all these things Republicans are failing at, and it's just kind of startling that folks don't really. I mean, we're still kind of neck and neck. Quite frankly, we shouldn't be. These are the people who shut the government down for 16 days. We ought to be blowing them out of the water, but we're still very neck and neck, still very, very competitive. And I just tell people that if you want to see workers treated right, if you want to see the environment done right, if you want to see business supported. By the way, another business thing, TRIA, terrorism risk insurance. They haven't done anything on that. Flood insurance. Yeah. They are failing on every metric, and somehow. But the problem is, if our people don't click in, if our people think, you know what, I'm not into politics, then, you basically might as well go sign up with the Koch brothers because, we need everybody in this fight and nobody's standing on the line. You're not sophisticated by not being involved.
Amen. That really people have to remember that in these midterm elections. But Ai-jen, so on immigration reform, I'm sure it's an important issue to you because a lot of your workers are Latina, right? Latinas or whatever.
Immigrants from all countries.
Immigrants from all countries. Yeah, sure.
Right.
Those are the jobs
it's absolutely critical. And there are large segments of our American workforce that are trapped in the shadows. And unable to elevate the quality of their jobs because we don't have immigration reform. And, it's everything from the issue of these refugee children who are coming and trying to find safe refuge in this country to people who've come here in order to find a better life for their families, to earn a living, to support their families. And we think that there should be a path to citizenship and out of the shadows for the full 11 million. And we're continuing to push for that. And one thing that people don't recognize is that actually the majority of undocumented, actually 2/3 of all undocumented people are women and children. And a lot of these women are the women that we count on to take care of our families and our homes.
Absolutely.
Right.
And they're in our families.
Right.
Yeah. And so if they're in our families and we trust them with the most precious elements of our lives, why wouldn't we offer an opportunity to actually get on a path to citizenship here? Isn't that better for all of us?
You're not going to get an argument from me. It sure is. I think people have to see that, and I think most Americans do see that. And Congressman, but also, I'm glad you use the word refugees because that's what we're talking about. And children, refugee children.
That is what this humanitarian crisis is about.
Most of these guys that you hear talking about this, talking against the legislation or talking against President Obama's request for a supplemental, do they realize we're talking about 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds? And
They know. They're very well aware. I mean, the fact is that
kids first, right?
Right. Well, that's what the Progressive Caucus. We issued a position, which we call a kids first response to the southern border humanitarian crisis, in which we say, first of all, we do not need to repeal or even modify the 2008 anti-trafficking law. This law is designed to stop human beings from being trafficked like so many goods in the warehouse of a boat. And so we don't need to change that. What we need to do
Signed by George Bush.
Signed by George Bush. We need to get more lawyers, more judges helping to adjudicate these cases. Groups like ACLU have found that as many as 60% of these people have a legitimate immigration case to make, whether it's an asylum case, refugee case, something like that. So if we just curtail this law, we'll never find out. We just send them on back. I mean, it's really kind of shocking when you consider the fact how you have massive violence, incredible violence in El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras, and yet at the same time, these people who are leaving this violence, escaping it for their lives. And by the way, we're not the only ones having the unaccompanied minors showing up on our borders. Every country in the region is having this problem. And yet we're going to say, we're not going to help. I mean, come on, we got to help. It is our moral duty and obligation.
Yeah, we're better than that.
We're better than that. We're a good country. We're a compassionate country. That's who we are.
Ai-jen Poo is here from the National Domestic Workers Alliance. Where can people find domesticworkers.org? Is that your website?
Right, exactly.
Domesticworkers.org. What's the next state in line to consider?
We're working in Connecticut, in Illinois. We're coming back around to do more in California, Oregon. There's Texas. Lots of states.
Man, she's got it going here.
I'm telling you, man, this is why I'm trying to hang out with Ai-jen Poo. But, one of the things that she's fighting for, too, is to make sure that every penny that her workers make, that they get. And this whole wage theft thing is something that we're really focusing our attention on.
What do you mean what does the word wage theft mean?
Well, what it means is that your employer might say, show up at 9, and then when you get there at, 8:50 or whatever, they say, you know what, it's slow, so you stay here until it picks up, but you can't leave. Or they say, you know what, you got to clean up your area first, and you're not going to go on the clock until it is clean. So you got to basically work until, while you're off the clock. Or maybe you'll work an 8-hour day, but you'll be entitled to a half an hour lunch and 2 15-minute breaks. They say it's too busy for you to have your break, but then when your paycheck comes back, they dock you for that hour, right?
Yeah.
Or you're working in a whole bunch of low-wage sectors where employers just don't pay you for hours worked.
Or like if you're an undocumented worker, they might just not pay you at all.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you have legislation on this, right? Bipartisan bill.
Yep, bipartisan bill. So we're going. It's appropriation season now, and so we've been bringing amendments to every appropriations bill to basically say that if you have a documented history of wage theft, violation of law, adjudicated already, then you cannot participate in this appropriation. And when it came to the defense appropriation bill, we demanded a recorded vote, and we won it 212 to 204, and we got it on a voice vote in 4 other bills. We only didn't win one, so that's the way it is. We're moving this forward. We're talking to the Senate, and here's my point: aren't there enough federal contractors out there who don't steal from their workers?
One would think. One would think. Exactly, right. This should be a no-brainer. And yet I saw the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the big business organizations are opposing it.
I'm kind of surprised that we got about 6 or 8 letters, no, maybe more than that now, who wanted people to vote no on my amendment. And so really what they're asking a member of Congress to do who has to go back to voters is to say yes to wage theft.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I support stealing people's money, right?
Right.
Workers' money. So Congressman Keith Ellison with us and Ai-jen Poo from the National Domestic Workers Alliance. We'll be back. Join the conversation anytime at 866-55-PRESS. Right back with our guest this morning on The Bill Press Show.
This is The Bill Press Show.
Don't look at me. Your hair's a bit frizzy today. Aww, you should pick that up. Oh, you're such a dork, loser. Here, let me help you with that. Oops.
Every day, kids witness bullying.
Oh, look, your crush is looking at you. Poor you.
They want to help, but don't know how.
See, no one here's gonna help you, because no one
Teach your kids how to be more than a bystander. Visit stopbullying.gov.
If you drive buzzed, it could cost you around $10,000. You'll face major legal fees, major fines, and steep insurance penalties. You could lose everything. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzz driving, because buzz driving is drunk driving.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making home affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Text the name Terry to 69222 for a sympathetic pep talk.
You show people what you really are.
Or for a gentle pep talk, text the name Deborah.
You know you're going to make people very proud of you.
And if that's not enough, text the name Danny for an extreme pep talk.
Prove everyone wrong. Show them you're the boss.
Get your GED pep talk and find free GED classes. Text the name of the person you want a pep talk from to 69222.
Did you see the world differently? Did you celebrate the victory?
Today, I state clearly and with conviction America's commitment to seek the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons.
Did you stand up against our greatest threat? Did you commit to change the world?
This is the Bill Press Show.
Already 27 minutes after the hour, in studio with us, Ai-jen Poo is Executive Director of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and Congressman Keith Ellison needs no introduction. But we just have about a minute left, Congressman. I have to ask you, you and other members of Congress this week, some of you, are on the minimum wage budget,
Yes.
minimum wage diet. How much is
Well, we're trying
wage?
to dramatize the reality of people who live on minimum wage every day. You know, the fact is, Americans who have the privilege of doing a little better may not understand that the average minimum wage worker is female, is about 29 to 33 years old, has children to feed, and you know and they may need food stamps or whatever, but that's only because the job they have just won't pay them enough.
Yeah.
You know, so the bottom line is that this is a way to sort of bring attention to an appalling condition. We have a historic low minimum wage when you compare it to inflation.
And we got to leave it right there. And what Congress has got to do is raise the minimum wage.
Raise the wage. Raise the wage.
At least. Thank you so much, both of you, for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You bet.
So this is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Pressing down, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello, that's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, The Bill Press Show, indeed, coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Brought to you today by the United Steelworkers and their international president, Leo Gerard. The United Steelworkers, North America's largest industrial union, representing over 1.2 million active and retired members, and find out more about their work keeping America's steel industry alive, such as it is, and bringing more steel manufacturing back to the United States. Their website is usw.org. On this Wednesday morning, just a bit of breaking news before we move on with the agenda here, and that is word that two Ukrainian fighter jets have been shot down this morning over eastern Ukraine, which I think only tells us that the separatists still have, if not the sophisticated weapon that brought down the Malaysian airliner, they still have their shoulder-to-air missiles that have brought down other fighter jets, and they're still using them despite. I mean, you would think there might be a moratorium on shooting down planes after what happened last Thursday, but apparently not. And that also means, of course, that Vladimir Putin has not given any instructions on them to kind of call off the dogs for a while. Meanwhile, here at home yesterday, some confusing, if not contradictory, decisions by two different appellate courts on the Affordable Care Act. Kyle Cheney, no relation, by the way, is a healthcare reporter for Politico covering the Affordable Care Act and healthcare issues, and joins us in studio this morning. Hi, Kyle. Nice to see you.
Good morning. Good to be here.
I did swear one time we would never have anybody named Cheney in this studio.
I always get asked, though, and you're right, no relation.
All right, good. We'll make an exception for you because we have a double checked your family tree, but we'll take it. So let's just. How do you explain? Ted Cruz said yesterday that decision by the D.C. appellate, two judges in the District of Columbia, that guts Obamacare. It means it's all over. and you might as well just forget about it and throw it away.
I think that's wishful thinking on the part of Republicans. There's a long way to go in this process, and as you noted, that was one of two decisions that reached completely contradictory conclusions about the Affordable Care Act. One of them, which sort of preserves the status quo in the way the law works, was kind of the more expected one, the D.C. Circuit one that sort of did.
Which circuit was that, by the way?
It was the Fourth Circuit.
The Fourth,
which I believe is Richmond-based, I want to say.
Yeah, right.
And they concluded that the Affordable Care Act, as it stands, is sort of it's workable. There's some ambiguity in the language of the law, and part of that could be really a result of how quickly they did have to pass it at the end.
Yeah.
But just because it's ambiguous doesn't mean you strike it. You strike core provisions of it. And the D.C. Circuit Court reached the opposite conclusion that there's no ambiguity. You can actually strike a central component, which is the availability of subsidies through federal exchanges. Which is where most people who signed up are getting their coverage, and that sort of did hearten Republicans in some way because it's the courts, which haven't really helped us out too much. You got the Hobby Lobby ruling a couple of weeks ago, and now you've got this ruling that really strikes more at the heart of Obamacare than even the Hobby Lobby ruling did.
Right. So the essence of these decisions, what they were dealing with was, as you pointed out, the availability of subsidies for people who can't afford to buy health care. They can get a federal subsidy. And the Fourth Circuit, if you will, the positive for the White House, said you can get that subsidy if you apply at the federal exchange or if you apply at the state exchange. And the D.C. said, no, only if you apply to the state exchange. Now, are you a lawyer?
I'm not.
No. Okay, neither am I, right? So we're both on equal ground here, right?
Right.
But if subsidies, if the whole goal is to help everybody get health insurance, and to help people who can't afford it, they can get some help from people who can't afford it, get some help from the federal government. Why would it make any difference whether you apply for a state exchange? Why should it make a difference?
Right.
State exchange or the national exchange?
And that's the administration's argument, too, and supporters of the health law say, look, I don't understand how any judges could reach the conclusion that a law that was designed to extend coverage to as many people as possible could be construed to mean that, we only meant the people signing up in state-based exchanges. When you get into the language and the letter of the law itself, that's where you get some of the ambiguity, but the administration says, well, look, the intent was clear.
Yeah, but the IRS ruled, right? Oh, no, the intent is really clear here. It doesn't matter where you apply, you get the subsidy.
Exactly. So, that's what the Fourth Circuit said, too, is even if you agree that the language is ambiguous, the agencies like the IRS have the latitude to
carry it out.
Right, who carry it out, have the latitude to interpret it in a reasonable way if there is ambiguity.
Yeah. One of the guests that we have, and often when we're talking legal issues, is Elizabeth Wydra from the Constitutional Accountability Center. And yesterday she mentioned, I think that second quote that we have here from Ellison, where that it just, like nobody can understand where these two judges were coming from. Here's Elizabeth Wydra.
It would make no sense for Congress to have written the law in the way that the majority of judges on the panel in the D.C. Circuit said that they did.
Yeah, those two judges make no sense. So what's the... So you have one decision went one way, one went the other. What's the practical, immediate effect of this?
Nothing. I mean, this is going to be subject to many other, legal actions and proceedings. The administration's already signaled that they're going to appeal this to the full D.C. Circuit Court, which they already know is generally more favorable to their position, and they're hopeful that'll sort of get rid of any sort of conflict between the two appeals courts, the two appellate courts. But the only thing that I think is nerve-wracking to people who support the law is there is this sort of outside shot that the Supreme Court would want to take a look at this because you have conflicting decisions at this point. And once you get to the Supreme Court, you never know what's going to happen there. But that even if that were to be the case, it's still months, if not years, away from coming to fruition.
Press Secretary Josh Earnest reminded us yesterday at the White House briefing that there are actually 4 challenges to Obamacare on this issue that are moving. Two of them we heard from yesterday. There's still 2 more. One has already been decided positive for the administration. So it's moving on several fronts. Probably will end up in front of the Supreme Court. Now, except for we did have the Hobby Lobby decision, but earlier the Supreme Court had looked at Obamacare, even with John Roberts voting in the majority, and said, Yeah, it's the law of the land. So even if it gets to the Supreme Court, it doesn't mean they're going to throw it out.
Exactly. And this argument, the availability of subsidies through the federal exchange versus state, was always considered kind of a long shot legal argument until the D.C. Circuit Court was really a surprise and did, hearten some of the conservatives who've been trying to get at the law through the courts. But no one saw it coming. It really was unexpected.
Yeah. I think they're whistling Dixie if they think that actually their legal challenges are going to succeed. But meantime, I saw yesterday some numbers, and I wanted to ask you about that as well, because we haven't heard, in terms of how successful, how Obamacare is doing right now, we haven't heard Republicans talk about repeal for a long time. I mean, it was the number one issue that they were going to run on in 2014 for a long time. Right. I mean, that's all they were talking about, repeal, and replace for a while, and then replace got lost, just repeal. Why have they stopped talking about it?
I think the numbers you're about to reference, I think, are a big reason. The enrollment surge when the healthcare.gov fell apart in October, and it was a disaster. And some of the state exchanges have been pretty close to as bad.
Rocky, yeah.
Really rocky.
State of Maryland was really
Maryland, Nevada, Massachusetts, Oregon, all disasters, and they were really proactive with the law. I think that really fed that narrative, the Republican narrative, this law. If it's this bad on the surface with the websites, look, you imagine what's underneath. Well, once the sites got fixed or they figured out some workarounds and people actually signed up in large numbers, much larger than expected, I think you saw the zeal for all-out repeal fade a little bit. It's still there on the surface. If you ask Republicans who are running, they'll still tell you they want to see it gone, but it's not their top issue anymore, at least.
No. I'm sure if they're talking to a real base audience, right, a real Tea Party town hall, they can throw out, we're going to repeal Obamacare by cheers. But in terms of as a general public campaign issue, it just doesn't have its appeal. And again, here are the numbers that you alluded to. 8 million Americans have signed up for under Obamacare. 6.7 more million on top of that have Medicaid, thanks to the expanded Medicaid available under Obamacare. Over 3 million young Americans on their parents' plan until they're 26. 7.9 million seniors saving $9.9 billion on prescription drugs because it got rid of the donut. And I love this, 74% of Republicans in that recent Gallup poll who have signed up for Obamacare say, I like it. So something's happening here. I mean,
yeah, I think those are the numbers. I think, and that again is probably at the center of why you're not hearing as much on the Republican front. It's the 8 million in particular, which is how many signed up through the April enrollment season. That
by the way, who would have thunk it? I mean, all of us thought that, but they never get the website fixed.
Right, and that number is even higher than that because people have continued signing up in sort of limited ways since April, and actually you've got people signing up outside the exchanges too, which is several million more. In the individual market, not unrelated to specifically the Obamacare exchanges.
So what is it? Maybe up to 10?
I've heard as high as 20 because if you count the 6.7 million Medicaid, you're talking as high as 20 by some analyses. So that enrollment, it's really, again, it's heartened the supporters of the health care law. The one thing is when you have a court ruling like the D.C. circuits, that does threaten to sort of revive the narrative on the Republican side. So you may see more of that now, even though it has been quiet lately.
Right. So you may have heard that Obamacare is dead after the ruling of two judges here in the District of Columbia yesterday. Don't believe it. It's not true. Kyle Cheney is with us from Politico, healthcare reporter. Your own experience with Obamacare, I'd love to hear from you at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. Racing dot. I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan. Big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
Connect with The Bill Press Show on Twitter. Follow us at BP Show and tweet using the hashtag WatchingBP. This is The Bill Press Show.
12 minutes before the top of the hour, in light of two contradictory court decisions yesterday on the Affordable Care Act, we're talking Obamacare with Kyle Cheney, healthcare reporter for Politico, which you follow, of course, at Politico.com. So, Kyle, what I hear next on everybody's talking about what comes next with the Affordable Care Act are premiums this year. It's September is generally the time when we find out.
It's going to be a trickle, and there's some time frames that generally end up around September when we're going to hear the new premium rates for exchange plans in 2015.
And what do we expect, and what could happen? Can insurance? These are private insurance plans. We have to keep reminding people this is not.
It's not the government jacking up anybody's rates, and actually, in some cases, they're not skyrocketing. You're seeing prices go up or premiums go up.
Do we know yet what they're going?
Only anecdotally, some states have released rates and things like that that'll be negotiated.
But insurance companies have the capacity under the Act, because these are private insurance plans, to raise rates. Correct?
They do.
Yeah,
they do, and some will. And actually, we've seen some examples where insurers have requested rate decreases to the surprise of some regulators, and so it's going to be all over the map. I think generally premiums go up as they have every year pre-Obamacare and during the Affordable Care Act as well. But what we've heard from regulators, at least in the states that have seen some numbers so far, is that they're seeing modest increases, things that are in some cases even smaller than previous, than prior to the ACA, but generally not these wild double-digit increases that have been.
They're not going to double or whatever, which some people were predicting. Is there any limit to how much they can increase?
Well, the states are still the primary regulators of their insurance markets, so
state by state, I guess.
Right.
Huh?
The insurance regulators have to sort of decide what they consider reasonable or excessive increases, and then what happens is they have to sort of negotiate that with the insurers and can sort of dig into why are you increasing rates. And the Affordable Care Act sets a sort of a 10% threshold.
That's what I was going to ask you about. Right. So if it's over 10%, they have to.
They submit to a rate review, and that's sort of
by the
yes, by
HHS.
HHS would do it in the case, especially in states where states often have that authority to do it on their own. In states where they don't, HHS can conduct the review. And what essentially that means is if the insurers are going to request something that high, they better be able to justify it, or else they're going to have to air out why they increase the premium so much.
Okay, and when is or is there another enrollment period? So a lot of Americans, maybe for whatever reason, they hung back all the bad publicity, or they just didn't trust the government. And now they're hearing, hey, this doesn't seem to be so bad. And my neighbor down the street, or my brother, my sister, whatever, they've signed up and they're happy with it. So maybe when's the next opportunity for people who did not sign up the first time around to get on board?
November 15th, when the next open enrollment period happens. So anyone who didn't sign up who's eligible can get in November 15th through February 15th. And now there's still opportunity to sign up today. The administration reminds people is if you graduated, if you got married, if you had a change in your life circumstances, like a job, you lost a job.
So enrollment is really in some form is always
right. And Medicaid. You talked about those Medicaid numbers. That's year round too.
Right. Scott is. Let's say a quick hello to Scott out in Chicago. Hello, Scott. What's up? Good morning.
How you doing today, Bill? The reason I'm calling is I was listening to your numbers.
Yeah.
First of all, my rate went down. In December, I was with one particular insurance company. Just for me, it was about $1,350 a month. And then I changed because of Obamacare taking care of pre-existing conditions. It went to about $650 a month.
Whoa, almost in half. Yeah.
It went from $800 to about $500 for the same thing. Now, when you're talking about the people who did it for Obamacare, here in Illinois, I did not use it through the exchange. I did it through a Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I'm hoping those numbers are part of the 20 million your guest was talking about.
I hope that they are too, Scott. They would be captured, would they, Kyle?
I think Scott said he got insured through Blue Cross, but not through an exchange, and that was when I was talking about people who signed up outside the exchanges. They call them off-exchange plans. They still have to comply with sort of the Obamacare standards, but they're sort of separate individual market plans that people can still sign up for.
So they're not part of the 8 million. But maybe
in the broader pool of
like the 20 million. Certainly,
exactly.
That's why it's bigger than we thought. Yeah, good news on Obamacare continues to have success despite what you may have heard about the court rulings yesterday. Kyle Cheney, thanks for coming in, clearing it up for us.
Great to be here, Bill.
All right, at Politico.com, and I'll be back with today's parting shot.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says The business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, as we were just talking, what a wild day for Obamacare yesterday. 2 court rulings, one which upheld the subsidies to buy health insurance that millions of Americans already enjoy. The other turned them down. So far in these challenges, however, the White House and the public are ahead 3-1. Meanwhile, you don't hear Republicans complaining very much about Obamacare anymore, do you? Well, that's because it's so successful. 8 million Americans have signed up. As we just heard, maybe it's closer to 20. When you count 6.7 more million Americans now have Medicaid. 7.9 million seniors have already saved $9.9 billion on prescription drugs. And 74% of Republicans on Obamacare say, hey, we like it. No wonder Republicans don't talk about repealing Obamacare anymore. In fact, the more successful Obamacare proves to be, the less you will hear about it. That's my parting shot for today, folks. Thanks for being with us this Wednesday morning. Go out and have a great day and come back again tomorrow morning. We'll be looking for you. We'll be waiting for you.
This
have a good one.
Bill Press Show.